All right, let's talk about the Sikh gurus, and this is a very sacred topic for those followers of the Sikh Dharma, but also really for everyone in the world should know about this great teaching. And so we're going to talk about the Guru Nanak Jayanti, but we're also going to talk about all the Sikh gurus in their teaching, which is very much theosophy, although it doesn't specifically mention the theosophia, which is, of course, a Greek term. But we're going to talk about, first of all, the great Guru Nanak and his one of his great sayings in the Adi Granth Sahib, which is their sacred book, is God is one, his name is truth, fashioner of all things, fearless and without enmity, timeless his image, unbegotten, self-existent, shown by the grace of the Guru. And that's from the Mul Mantra in the Adi Granth. And can you all see that? Because I can see you, but
Yes.
I'm not.
Yes, Judy, we can see it very well. Thank you.
Okay, let's go on then. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the context in which the Sikh Dharma arose. First of all, Kabir, who in the 15th century was a predecessor of Guru Nanak, an elder predecessor, he was brought up in the Hindu tradition and actually lived in Benares or Varanasi, but he left Varanasi at the time he was going to die because he was so tired of this ritual that you have to die in that place. And he said that all images are all lifeless. They cannot speak. I know, for I have cried aloud to them. The Quran and the Quran are mere words. Lifting the veil I have seen. Kabir. So both Nanak and Kabir were dissatisfied with Islam and Hindu practices, but both were influenced by Kashmir Shaivism, which is basically, they're both monistic teachings in which, like the Vedanta, God is one with all. And so Kabir is an elder predecessor of Nanak, and some of his poems are included in the Adi Granth Sahib, which is a huge book of 1,420 pages in many different languages. Okay, so we'll go on about the Guru Nanak Jayanti is a reference to his birthday, which is actually April 15th. In 1469, he's born to a Bedi Kshatriya family. However, the birthday, the Jayanti, which is really also is a reference to triumph, Jaya being the word victory, is celebrated on November 19th of this year because it's on a lunar calendar. And it's also said that he achieved Amrit, or his great enlightenment epiphany, at the end of the Diwali festival of the Hindus. And there are legends about him. He's said to have assumed a full lotus posture at 7 months and laughed like a man at birth. And as a young man, he sought out yogis, sadhus, and sants for instruction. So he was always very seriously seeking the truth. And he had a great epiphany, which is called the Amrit, or the nectar of immortality. You know, the word in the voice of the silence, Amrit is sweet waters. And this was attained when he was about 30 years old. And the legend says that during ablutions at a river, he disappeared and his clothes were found. And the Muslim person, the ruler for whom he worked, even had the river dragged to find out what had happened to him. But it is said that he was taken to a heavenly abode for 3 days and remained silent about his experience until he uttered the words that marked the beginning of his mission. Can you people see all of the words, or do we need to cut down some of it?
We can see them all, Judy.
Okay, very good. Thanks. Okay, so Nanak made a great proclamation. There's neither Hindu nor Muslim, so whose path shall I follow? I follow God's path. God is neither Hindu nor Muslim, and the path I follow is God's. So from this moment, he really dispelled the darkness with Gu, with the Enlightenment Ru, and he founded Sangat, a community. He renounced all kinds of um, rituals and prayer without concentration and caste, which is very important. And he considered the community to, he's considered to be neither an avatar, but one who has achieved unity with God. He's not a prophet either. I said he died peacefully in 1539 and passed the Dharma on to Guru Angad, who is called Nanak too. And all the Sikh gurus from the first one up to 10 are called Nanak 1, 2, 3, etc. And Angad has uh, ruled for a considerable time, and it said that Ang means limb or part of me. And then from the Sikhs, all their Sat gurus have the spiritual light, which is very important because the guru is not a prophet as in Islam, kind of a channeler of God, nor an avatar, a divine incarnation of God, but he has the light of God and has attained a unity with God. So each guru received a transmission, and each guru is said to be one with Nanak. And so Angad, who was actually a friend of the Guru Nanak, not one of his two sons, received from his spiritual father a whole collection of hymns. And there are also hymns composed from both Muslim and Hindu sants or sadhus, saints, and Nanak himself. And Nanak added some of his own hymns, and these form the Adi Granth, which is the sacred book of the Sikhs and which they regard as their guru now. And the Sikhs are the only major religion that has different traditions from different sacred texts, and also texts from poets, which is Kabir. So from the Adi Granth, we have this following saying: without the word, we have no discernment. The word of the Guru is light. The world's light leads to the truth. Their death has no sway. His light is merged into light. So the Guru has the light of the divine, but he's not himself to be worshipped, but he is to be seen as one who has attained a unity with the divine. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the life of Nanak, because the life is itself a teaching. As I said, he worked for an accountant for a Muslim Khan. And at one point, he was accused of embezzling, but he was in fact giving his own money to the poor. He married and had 2 children, which is really important because for the Sikh, being a householder is a very supreme state. You do not have to be an ascetic. And I think Jonathan did a beautiful job when he talked about secular monasticism, because Nanak and the gurus are a perfect example of this. It's also very important, again, that he rejected caste and ritual prayer without concentration. And it said that he visited the Kaaba in Mecca, which moved toward him. Again, this is legendary. I don't know if we should take this literally. The Kaaba is the great cube, and which has the meteorite sacred to the Muslims. But I don't know how this typo in here, but he did not prostrate. And he was upbraided by a Muslim businessman. And Nanak said to him, "You had your mind on a horse trading deal in Kabul while you were prostrating." So apparently he had paranormal cities. And when he was criticized for sleeping with his feet toward the Kaaba, he he said, "Show me a place where Allah is not." So it's also said that a Qazi in Mecca said he had attained the status of a fakir of Allah, very high state in Islam, or one who has achieved union with Allah. But in 1521, he gave up his ascetic wanderings and returned to his house. Okay, so it said that Amar Das, um, Angad's father-in-law, succeeded as guru, and he was actually visited by the Emperor Akbar, who is said to have actually sat in the communal kitchen as a disciple. And Akbar was trying very hard to achieve enduring Muslim Hindu unity. Akbar was a very good man, a good emperor, and his tomb near Agra, where the Taj Mahal is very much revered. And one of his wives was Hindu, so he tried to learn a lot from her about her religion, although he was Muslim. Well, then the fourth group, Anda, established Agadi, and this guru's village became Amritsar, the Golden Temple, or the Darbar Sahib. And this was made possible by a gift of land by Akbar, and um, that is actually in. Wait a minute, I've gone ahead too far. Okay, okay, this is the Golden Temple at Amritsar, which I think is on the flyer, and this is in the Punjab, and this was because Akbar granted a great deal of land to the Sikh people because they believed in such unity of religion, which Akbar was very much for. And unfortunately, this did not last. This wonderful sense of unity, and so we'll have to go on to tragedy that follows. Really, because that begins with Guru Arjan, and I just have a story to tell about Guru Arjan and how I happened to choose this blue background for the talk. When I was on my way to Mariposa near Yosemite to give a lecture to my former student Adam Finney's high school class in Mariposa, I was a little worried about a presentation I had to give at the lodge the following Sunday. And I didn't know much about Guru Arjan. And there in my path was a tall, handsome man wearing a turban of exactly this color. So I went up to him and said, "Namaste, you are Sikh?" And he said, "Oh, yes." And I said, "Would you tell me about the important holiday you are expecting?" He said, "Yes, it's the martyrdom of the Guru Arjan." So we talked about Arjan for a while, and I learned a lot. I felt here a teacher had been put in my path. But the Guru Arjan story is a great tragedy. At first, Akbar favored him and gave him a title of Satya Padash, the true emperor. And Arjan established an authoritative collection of scriptures. But when Akbar died, Arjan was accused of intriguing against the new emperor, Jehangir. And this is not the same as Shah Jahan's son, Jahangir. But unfortunately, Arjan's brother was a schemer and apparently very jealous of him, and he convinced the emperor that he had been responsible for a rebellion. And so Akbar was tortured to death and drowned, and becoming the first Sikh martyr. And it's said that even during his torture, he never showed anger to his colleagues, never showed anger to the emperor or anyone who was torturing him, and never cried out. So he was quite brilliant. So We'll go to the next slide then. Sikh militancy developed after that. Arjan's son, Hargobind Nanak VI, declared that the Sikhs would defend themselves with weapons only as a last resort. And with Emperor Shah Jahan in 1628, Mughal Sikh relations grew worse. And Emperor Aurangzeb later persecuted both Sikhs and Hindus. He had temples burned, schools destroyed, murdered people. And then there was another guru, Hari Rai, who ascended in 1644 as Nanak VII, and his son, Har Krishnan Guru VIII, died as a child under house arrest. But even as a child, he was able to name a guru, granduncle Hargobind's son, Teg Bahadur, who became Guru the Ninth. And it said that Teg Bahadur, brave sword, rallied the community, and he was arrested by the Mughal emperors and chose martyrdom over conversion to Islam. And so it was in 1675, an auspicious date, that Gobind Singh became the 10th and last guru of the Sikhs. And so this is also very important for the whole issue of militancy, which was not meant to be violent initially. It was only meant to be defense in the last resort. So really by 1699, there had to be a declaration of Khalsa, or defense of the Sikhs, because they were besieged on all sides by that time. And Guru Gobind Singh issued a challenge at Anandpur. So he asked Sikhs to give their lives by volunteering their heads. And when the first one went into a tent, he pretended to chop off the head of the volunteer and showed a sword with animal's blood. And then he asked for another man to come. And there are 4 others who volunteered, and they formed the Khalsa, the pure ones, or defenders of the Sikhs, and carried the name Singh, or lion. So you know, there are a lot of Sikh people named Singh because of that. And certainly these men were very brave to do that. And they formed what is called the Paj Katke. And there were, a sign of their religion were 5 characteristics that are, of course, just external: the kesh, uncut hair; kanga, a comb; kirpan, a sword, which is really a dagger, a very short sword. And it's in the Constitution of the Republic of India that they're permitted to carry it, but it's controversial. Kara, a steel wristband; and the kachash, the breeches that do not extend below the knee. The Sikh men wear these clothes. The Sikh women simply wear saris. And of course, women are quite revered in the Sikh tradition because, of course, they are the mothers of the gurus and are granted equal status. Even in modern India, I actually saw a Sikh officer wearing a turban. She was a woman mounted on a black horse, and a captain leading a company of men who were marching very smartly behind her. And I thought, well, the Rani of Jhansi's riding for India again. Rani of Jhansi was a Maharani who held off the British for some time after her husband and sons and brothers had died. Okay, so these are just external signs that a Sikh will wear. And I did go to a wedding once in which there was absolutely beautiful young man wearing the full regalia, getting married to a beautiful woman in a sari, and they walked around the Adi Granth 7 times. It was lovely. Okay, then here's a very important moment in the Sikh tradition, that rather than choose another guru, which had become a subject of controversy, Sikh Gobind Singh proclaimed the scripture itself to be the guru. And this is supremely important because, again, the guru was not in himself as a person to be worshipped. It was the light that came through him, which were the teachings. So any true guru points to a teaching. And so the Adi Granth Sahib, it's 420 pages of poems of poets such as Kabir, hymns of the Gurus, Muslim and Hindu scriptures, and language include dialects of Punjabi, Hindi, Marathi, Persian, and Sahakriti, and it's all done in a special script. These languages are an amalgam of Sanskrit, Prakriti, and Apabhramsa. This is according to Dr. Raghavan Iyer's analysis of this, but of course, it is read constantly and chanted in the Sikh temples every day that they have. Okay, so here are some of the basic teachings that are most important, and I think you'll find that they're very much in tune with the wisdom religion, that God is Nam, name, or Sab, word, and the name is sacred, but God by any name is God. And Guru Nanak says God cannot be set up, nor can his likeness be shaped like a man. He begot himself and sustains himself on his heights forever unsustained. Honored are those in his shrine who meditate on him. So the meditation is on the divine alone, and there is no image for it, but the very Nam itself is to be meditated upon. So rather like the first fundamental, it's omnipresent, immutable, and boundless. Okay, so God is both transcendent and attributeless, nirguna, and immanent with attributes or qualities, saguna. And the human being is in the image of God. The human being has free will. He will be free only when his, her will unites with the divine will. So humans get caught in haumai, which I think is a Persian word, a sense of separate selfhood. This leads them astray from God. So this is the big hangup we have, the small SELF in theosophical teaching, that you think that the personality is real and you want to aggrandize that for success and pleasure in a finite life. Well, of course, you're far afield from God, and we all get into that situation at one time or another, according to this. But the Guru Gobind Singh chanted, incidentally, he didn't even want to include himself in the Adi Granth, but his chants are remembered. He said, when the Creator projected himself, all earthly creatures took on their shapes. But when you absorb creation within yourself, O Lord, embodied beings are absorbed in you. So one can overcome umai through patience and the path of mukti, absorbing the grace of the Guru. So the Guru's teachings are still important, and his grace is important, but it is really the teaching which is fundamental. Also, there are 5 stages of development. Now, there's the Dharam Khan, the realm of ignorance or samsara. And normal folks like us are all born into this. But one seeks justice and righteousness in this, if one is at least a seeker. On the next stage is Jian Khan, the realm of knowledge and awareness of the mystery of existence and presence of God. And then there's Saram Khan, the realm of effort, where one brings one's face in tune with the divine. And then Karam Khan, the real grace dwelling bliss and full awareness of God as Saguna, which of course is the God of attributes in this realm. And then the Sakchand is the realm of truth in which deity abides in the formless nirguna or reality. So the ultimate reality is formless without name and really cannot be fully comprehended unless this one is on the stage of is on the level. So another Adi Granth teaching here is that everyone longs for Swarg, Mukti, and Vaikunda, paradise, liberation, and heaven. Of course, we all long for that, but and rest all hope on them. Those who long for the vision of God do not seek release; they are satisfied with this sight alone. So this reminds me very much of the Sufi mystics that Rumi writes about, like Shams of Tabriz, who lived as a complete pauper in the desert, but was totally joyful because he knew God. So it's said that the highest state is to take birth under hukam, not under karma, but to benefit others. And such a one was Guru Nanak, that said that he chose to be reborn, that he didn't choose birth because he had to, but like a bodhisattva in Buddhism, he chose rebirth. And so I think, I'm sorry I wasn't able to get all this up on Nanak, but this is the blessing for his birthday, that may his holy presence enlighten you with knowledge. So happy Guru Nanak Jayanti. And those who enjoin in this this great presence have his blessing. So if you have any questions about this, I apologize for some of the typos. I haven't had anyone else to really go over this with me in detail, but I'll get rid of them eventually. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and let's go ahead and go back and talk with each other. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute unless you want to see another slide.
It's good to stop for the moment, Judy.
Okay, that's okay. Here we go.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Judy.
Yeah, I'm sure you you have contributions or questions about this. Yes, Monica.
You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Judy. This was wonderful. I just am curious. There was a section where you talked about the poets, and I know Kabir's name is mentioned, and I wondered if Hafiz and also Rumi were a part of this sect. Do you know anything about that? I was just curious.
Well, I really don't know if they form any kind of a brotherhood. Kabir, of course, was in India, and Rumi and Shams of Tabriz, Hafiz were in Persia. And
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if they had any contact with each other, but
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not being clear, I think. I was just wondering if they were a part of the Sikh.
no.
Oh, okay.
Rumi was a Muslim Sufi mystic, but I mean, the so-called Orthodox Muslims, the Sunnis, don't like the Sufis at all. consider them heretics, and even some of the Sunnis considered the Shi'i heretics. And I had to deal with this when I was teaching at Cal Poly. And I said I wasn't going to let anybody else call anyone else a heretic in my class, because everyone was a heretic to somebody else. But the Sikhs really got it in India because they were considered heretical by both the Hindus and Muslims, although the Muslims were, Muslim emperors were more mean to them than anyone else. I mean, there are many teachings you can find in the Sikhs, like the Nirguna and Saguna Brahman, that are in Hindu philosophy.
I see.
So I would say Rumi, Hafiz, these are all Sufi Muslims, but they would be very much revered and respected by the Sikh gurus. And of course, I've never gone through the whole Adi Granth, but
I was just curious because I've seen, like in Barnes and Noble, they're the collected works of both of them
mhm.
are sold together very often. So it just made me wonder. Thank you.
Yes, of course, because they're all really interconnected. Yeah, I guess Jeff and Leslie have a comment or contribution or a question.
I'm wondering if just on the side, just after what Monica said, that the Hindu-Muslim unity idea is connecting them in some sense. But I was just going to say a couple of little things that that I found interesting about the Sikh cultural contributions and community, and
Could you speak closer to the microphone, I think?
yeah.
Sorry about that.
Just as a side bit, my grandmother, she grew up or lived for a long time north of Sacramento, and one of the largest immigrant populations to the U.S. of Sikhs
Yeah.
landed there and were agricultural workers. So she remembers meeting and seeing a lot of Sikhs in her childhood. That's like 1917 or 18. But I was going to say that last week I worked at the Ali Akbar College of Music. It's an Indian classical music school. A man came in with his father, and they were Sikh, and I still remember this like as yesterday. So I was just working away at the desk, counting stuff, and the father came in, and he looked at this school, which is kind of dilapidated, I have to say. But he was like, "This is like a place of worship to me. I'm so glad to visit." And he came into the office, which to me just was kind of a humdrum spot at that point. And he said, "I must sing for you." So he said, "I'm going to sing from the Guru Granth Sahib." Is that what it's called? I think. But
Adi
all of
Granth.
all the music in that, most of it anyway, is classically based Indian classical music, ragas. So he just sang for like 10 minutes. He just kept singing. His son is like an engineer. He was kind of embarrassed. He was by the door. But I was like totally moved, and it was really beautiful. And then I just remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not going to have a job like this for a while. I went to an accounting firm, and it was like the exact opposite. But anyway, that was one quick thing. And then the last thing I was going to say is um, that expression that the Sikhs use to say hello to each other is it's a shortened version of something longer, I think, from Guru Gobind Singh, which is I don't know the whole thing, but the latter part of it, which is the most often used, is Sat Sri Akal, which I understand means truth is not a part of any time. It's like timeless. It's more specific in the translation than that, but it's essentially comes down. It's beyond time. Truth is
Exactly. Well, that's a beautiful story. Yes, the Sikhs are very open to all spiritual teachings, and I know there is a Sikh Dharma on the Central Coast, and I went to one of their meetings, and everyone was welcome. It was a wonderful, welcoming experience, and I know there are many Sikhs in California, and especially in the Valley. That's why I happened to meet this gentleman with a beautiful blue turban, probably.
I think too, Judy, I have a Sikh friends that they say that they were the first to kind of leave India. There were business people like that left too, but and went to Africa and other places. But the Sikhs were very outward looking. So they say that like a lot of their names, even some of the names of some Sikhs, if they're not Singh, they're like Kennedy. Like they name them after people, sort of an international group of people. So it's
Right,
they
right,
can't.
and they're very
And,
they believe in taking spirituality into the world.
and they're
Very
conducive.
very much householder and asceticism is all right, but you need to go live in the world and be a wife or husband or father. And I've always thought a Sikh gentleman would make a wonderful husband if I'm ever incarnated as a woman again. But anyway, Kirk Gradine has
I
his
just want, last thing I want to say before Kirk starts, just
yes.
that I always felt like that even though the Punjab is very fertile, the land, I
Mhm.
feel like the fact that they didn't embrace, that they in fact rejected caste, it let people of all talents come up and their natural talents could be participatory. So it shows in the fact that their areas are not super poor and the people have had, you know, better success economically. I think it's
Right,
partly,
right. And in the Golden Temple of Amritsar, there are 4 doors where anyone of any caste may enter because all are equal. Again, we want to hear what Kirk has to say. So thank you.
yeah, sure, thanks.
Wonderful comment.
Well, right along with that, Judy, this segues very nicely into what I was going to mention, and that is my first visit to India was in the late 70s. And the passage, we were passing by bus through the Middle East into India, and the normal passageway was blocked, so we had to go through Pakistan. And the first city, and in Pakistan, as you travel by bus or train, it's mostly desert, right? And arid, dry, no trees, a very harsh atmosphere. But as you come into India, it's like everything changes. And Amritsar is one of the first cities that the train from through Pakistan enters as it goes into India. And of course, the golden temple there of that city, and anyone who is desolate or spiritually inclined goes there, which is I was desolate at the time, and because they, as you say, they open their doors to anyone. And one of the Sikh traditions, they believe that their dharma is to feed the world, and the Golden Temple feeds thousands of people every day without question. The finest Indian meal that you can imagine just by going in the door. And of course, there's this, your photograph didn't show it, but there's a big shallow pond in front of the temple and these covered walkways that surround it. So you can sit in the shade. There's music playing all the time. It's very clean. Everything is kept very clean and tidy. And you're served food, anyone who wants it. There's no questions asked. And it's still going on today. Thousands of people, and it's made possible by Sikh farmers and very wealthy Sikh of all different trades who donate huge quantities of food and bring food, and volunteers who are very meagerly paid, who spend their day preparing food to feed the needy and anyone who wants. So I just wanted to mention that was, and plus you have this a band of classical musicians playing there, while you're dining, and you can sleep there. If people who have no place to sleep can stay, and they don't force you to leave. There's no one is asked to leave at any point. So it's very much, community based. All it's the theme is a universal brotherhood, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, just wanted to bring that into the discussion.
And that's true of every Sikh temple or Gurdwara all over the world. And here too, you can go and just have a meal. They just offer it up.
After the flooding in Houston, the Sikh temples in Houston fed thousands of people.
Yes, well, it definitely is a religion of universal brotherhood that is in practice. And as I said, it's a practical religion because, like Guru Nanak himself, although he was ascetic and a wanderer for a while, he returned to his household. And he thought it was very important that Sikh men and women married, raised children, taught them the Dharma, and that one did not have to go off into the woods and away from people, and that this, in fact, was spiritually selfish. to do this forever, that one needed to return. And I know the story of Satish Kumar reminds me very much of the Sikh teaching, although he was a Jain monk. He's contemporary. And he and a man named Mehta, who was Hindu, decided, when Satish Kumar decided to leave the Jain ashram and go into the world, he said, we're going to go to Pakistan and around the world, and we will take no food or water with us, and we will come in peace to teach. And Satish Kumar told us at a retreat up at Saka Lake years ago, he said the friends in India said, oh, don't go, the Pakistanis will kill you, you know, this is terrible, you can't do this, the Muslims don't like you. He said, well, they got to the border, crossed the border with their passport, and a very fine Pakistani gentleman came up to him and said, you are Satish, you are Mehta, you are welcome. He said, India, Pakistan, this is nonsense. Hindu, Muslim, this is nonsense. He said, you will be my guest. You will stay and eat and live with us. He said, then I have telephone relatives in Afghanistan who have telephone relatives in the Soviet Union, who have telephone relatives in Poland, and they all wish to hear your teachings. So Satish Kumar wrote about this and wound up in England, where he married, and eventually wound up in the United States, addressed us at Zaka Lake. But I thought, although a Jain, that this was very much like what Guru Nanak was saying. All these different religious barriers are just nonsense, and we're all human, and we're all seeking the truth, and so let's live in that way. And this certainly is the wisdom religion teaching, although the word theosophy, of course, is not used in the Adi Granth. It's has a Greek root, but it certainly is the Gupta Vidya, and which is the sacred knowledge. And I would say that there are Sikh gurus who might possibly be among the masters. I am not privileged to this knowledge at all, and I didn't find a direct reference in the secret doctrine to them, but perhaps in some theosophical literature there is, which some of you could enlighten me about.
Well, in the Jewel and the Lotus, there's a number of selections from the Adi Granth, and one of them that's clearly resonant with theosophical teaching is, I believe it's one of the sayings of Guru Nanak, is that let brotherhood with every man on earth be the highest aspiration of your order.
Yes, that's again a collection done by Dr. Raghavan Iyer. Yes, that's a very important teaching, that brotherhood is fundamental and should be practiced by all people. So yes, thank you for that.
Judy, I have a question. This could be me getting in over my skis here, but I'm going to ask a question that's kind of metaphysical, but maybe not too bad. I was wondering if there's this, you brought up in your presentation about there's this idea, there's the 5 levels. And the first one just kind of starts off where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of the idea that there's a recognition of wisdom, and then there's more of a deliberate embracing of wisdom, I guess. And then there's the realization of, I forgot what you said, but I'm going to say deity as saguna, and then finally deity as nirguna. And the saguna has to do with the apparent immanence of deity. God is everywhere. And nirguna is that God is transcendent. You can't say anything about that. But I was wondering, and if you don't see a connection with it, that's okay. But I was wondering if there's any connection with the idea that being able to see God, a deity, as both immanent and transcendent, not either one, but both, if there's any connection between that and the idea of universal brotherhood.
The question is there any connection between the Saguna Brahman and the Nirguna Brahman and universal brotherhood? Well, I would say yes. Saguna is, of course, God with attributes. And I think the Sikh guru certainly sees God in every human being, but not realized. Well, the Sikh gurus are said to have realized God. Like the Sufi Muslims talk about unity with Allah. And I certainly think that at the state of the final state of Nirguna, there is a realization of what we would call the first fundamental principle of theosophy, the eternal, immutable, boundless, but omnipresent principle. And that these are unified in every being. I mean, as the voice of the silence says, that which is uncreate abides in the disciple. So I think both come together in the Sikh guru, and there's a realization of brotherhood because every being that you meet has that wonderful light. But in some, of course, it is realized more and shines brighter. And it's like the wonderful man that I met on the path to the restroom out in the valley. So I think we need to think of that as that's a very important teaching, and it of course it comes in stages. One has to have patience, and of course the devoted Sikhs go to hear the Adi Granth chanted all the time, and it's chanted constantly in the temples. I think Jeff or Leslie has another comment or question.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Jonathan, there's an interesting passage in the Mahatma letters where Kutumi says that the adepts do not object to being called pantheists. And that, of course, is God immanent.
God immanent, yeah.
Of course, yeah, Saguna. Well, of course, because this was important to Nanak, because again, he gave up the ascetic celibate life, returned to his household, and he thought this was very important to take care of not only his own family but others, and to give it others as much as he could, and then also it's very important that, like the Buddhist teaching of the Bodhisattva, the Mahayana Buddhists, that even if you have burned out all your karma, that the highest state is the return to teach others. And he was such a being that he did not go to any heavenly state permanently, but he returned to help and teach others, and founded a great community, although he never intended to found a new religion. Again, he thought he was teaching an ancient wisdom idea. And I think he did teach the wisdom religion in his own way, in his own language. And of course, the Adi Granth has many different languages, and it's all written in a particular script. And I would not be able to read it in the original, but as Kirk pointed out, the collection, The Jewel in the Lotus, edited by Raghavan Iyer, has many wonderful selections from the Adi Granth. So it is available, and many ideas from it are available online.
The Sikhs I know also have very rich and deeply developed practices of meditation, particularly associated with sound, meditation on sound, and the chanting of mantras from the Granth. So I know that for a fact. I visited one community north of Amritsar where that was a very revered and developed practice being continued to be handed on through lineages. And also there was a note in the chat box, someone named Shafali had her hand up.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I did. But I'm sure I can ask now. Judy, I had a couple of questions. One of them is more like historical, and the other one was kind of more of a general one. I know you were mentioning when you mentioned the fifth guru. I was just curious if you mentioned he was martyred, and I was curious about the Jahangir, or I wasn't sure if it was the son of that man, or of Akbar, or a different one. That was just like a technical thing. I was curious about that. And then I had a question in general about the how the sense of separate self, which leads away from God. And I was wondering if you could go into that more, and what they thought was a way to avoid that, how they would avoid that, or try to find a way to not have that happen. You know, like what are their practice beliefs about that? That's like a
Well, there's two questions. One is historical, and the other, I think, is about the doctrine of Humai, or what leads away from God, which is the word Maya is used as it is in his Hinduism. First, the historical question. In the article I read by Raghavan Iyer and other articles, the name Jahangir is spelled differently, and I know Jahangir was the son of Shah Jahan, who built the Taj Mahal, and he was very cruel to his father. He imprisoned his father, and his father could only see the beautiful building through a mirror, which is rather mean. And so I'm not sure if this is the same emperor, because it's spelled differently. It seems to be pronounced differently, but this emperor persecuted the Sikhs and had Guru Nanak tortured and murdered. So that is the beginning of their not tolerating this behavior any longer. Akbar was a good man and wanted unity of all religions, especially the Muslims and the Hindus. Now to go to the philosophical question, Humai, which I think is also in Persian Sufism, is what we all fall into, the samsara of thinking, our personal identity, our desire for success and pleasure and power, and that we think this is real. And we have to get out of this and begin to take a path. And in order to ever achieve any real free will or happiness, although we have free will, unless we find the divine will, we're never going to be really free, according to the Sikh teaching. And that's the way I understand it. And of course, that is very much like the teaching in theosophy, in the voice of the silence, where there is the hall of ignorance, the hall of learning, and the hall of wisdom. And of course, we need to find the hall of wisdom to really unite. And of course, music, as it was mentioned, sound is very important, as it is with the Sufis. I remember going to a conference on Persian Sufism in Washington, D.C. years ago, run by Professor Said Hossein Nasser, who was a Sufi Muslim, and he invited 18 Sufi musicians from Iran. And it was announced to a bunch of skeptical academics, the purpose of the music is to unite all of us and to invoke the presence of Allah. And by the end of 2 hours, something happened in that room. I can't articulate what happened, but when it ended, we all applauded and no one said a word when we left. It was just amazing. And they all got up and bowed like, well, of course. Yeah, it was just wonderful. And I think this is very much the way the Sikhs operate as well.
Yeah.
On the historical point, it is that the grandson of Akbar, Jahangir, who began the war against the Sikh community. And there was typo on Judy's slide on that particular point that said Akbar was tortured. It's Arjun, the fifth guru, that was tortured, not
Yeah.
Akbar.
Well, that's true. It is Arjun.
Yeah,
I can't believe I did that. I haven't had anyone to go over the actual typing on the slide,
yeah,
so
it's very
that's
easy to
pretty
do.
bad.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
Robert had his hand up, and then Donna also. I don't know,
yeah.
Robert, did you have your question answered?
I'm gonna let Donna ask her question.
Okay. So you're up, Donna.
Thank you, Judy, very much. Um, I was just curious if you could say anything more about the idea that there was a Nanak 1 and a Nanak 2 and a Nanak 3, like a lineage of different teachers, but they all came under the same name or title, because I think that's not completely unusual in some religious traditions. Is that, could you say anything more about that?
Well, I'll try. As I understand it, this way of doing things is pretty unique in that it said that Nanak one and his successor Angad, who was actually a friend rather than either of his two sons, received the transmission, and Nanak declared he was like a limb of himself, and that the grace of the guru was poured into him, and so with the succeeding gurus. And then finally, it became the Adi Granth Sahib that became Lord. And so uh, I I know that in the transmission of the caliphs and is in Islam and the imams and the Shi'i tradition, it's not quite like that. That you're that the caliphs are like the viceroys. The successors are representatives of the prophet of God, but not himself. But there is because there is a monism, a unity, I think, in the Sikh tradition. Each guru is, in a sense, also like the first guru, and is to be revered, but not worshipped uh, as a personality. They were very clear about that. And that's the way I would think of that and explain it. Again, it's the guru is not a prophet and not an avatar, but one who has the light of the teachings and points to the teachings. So I
Thank
hope
you.
that answers it.
Thank you. Very helpful.
I had a question that would follow up on that, Judy. There's that idea of the grace of the guru. Where does that fit in with the idea of the light versus in other words, it sounds like it's about the light more than the person, or anyway, I'll let you try and clean that one up.
Okay, the grace of the guru and the light of the guru. Well, and in some sense, they're virtually the same, because when you read the guru's teaching, you receive the light and you receive the grace. But again, this is not any kind of vicarious atonement. The guru origin isn't martyred to take away your problems. The guru, and then there was another of the gurus who was also martyred. I think it was the eighth one. The, their martyrdoms were tragic, but the actual light and grace must be received. It said, if you take one step toward God, he'll take 1,000 steps toward you. It's one of the sayings of the Guru Nanak. And in a sense, we have to do it ourselves, but we have this teaching according to the Sikhs. We have the Adi Granth, we have everything we need, and the story of the gurus, I think, is in itself a teaching. Their history and the tragedy of some of them, but also the triumph of all of them.
Thank you.
Sue Prescott had her hand up at one point. Sue, did you get your question answered?
Well, I just wanted to say how good that was. I was just so impressed with the flow of what you spoke, what you chose to put on your slides, shows your total knowledge of it, as well as theosophy, and you kind of wrap them together. It's just wonderful, and it'd be really nice to hear you again on any topic that you want to talk about. Over.
Well, thank you very much for that. I made some mistakes. I did a lot of this very late last night, and I didn't get any chance to have anyone else proofread it, but at least I think it was basically clear, and I thank you very much for that kind remark. I will be speaking about the Church Father origin on December 11th, and as I like to talk about religion, that was the subject in which I taught at the university level. However, I think, we know that in theosophy there is a synthesis of philosophy, religion, and science. There's a great deal more to all of this, and believe me, my knowledge is not total about this. It's only beginning knowledge and very limited, but I look forward to always learning more. And I really appreciate the contributions, especially Kirk had more actual experience in Amritsar. I've been to India, but when I was there, they weren't letting anyone into the Punjab. That was in 1991, the first time I was in India. And a few years before, a terrible tragedy had happened, that the more militant Sikhs had been holding armaments in the Golden Temple, and Indira Gandhi rather foolishly sent the Indian army into the Golden Temple. And for this insult, her two Sikh bodyguards actually killed her, although she had been advised to dismiss them. And this was not approved of by the greater part of the Sikh community, but they felt that they had to do this, I guess. So, I mean, it was a terrible tragedy that she was murdered. And this is not what the Sikh Dharma teaches. It teaches that they will go to militancy only as a last resort. But of course, there were always those in every community who will carry any idea too far. And that's what's happened. And the Sikhs, I know, are generally non-violent people and will do anything to solve a problem in that way rather than go to armaments of any sort.
I'm one of those folks who have had many opportunities to hear Judy speak over the years. And I could tell you, she's one of those people that has a remarkably precise memory for specific passages, not just in the English language, but in Sanskrit, Latin. You know some Latin as well, don't you, Judy?
The outlooks.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just a remarkably accurate ability to recollect and bring passages in front of those she's speaking to that are directly, relevant to the question. So, and just a remarkable scope of knowledge on many different traditions. So yes, thanks for mentioning that, Sue.
Thank you very much. It's very kind. You could also mention I make a lot of typographical errors.
I'll be a
type with.
Well, since you mentioned it 4 or 5 times, I didn't feel like I had to.
I'm going to have those errors. Actually, I hope you don't put this online until I clear that up. But
you can work with Truth on that. Yeah, maybe we can figure out how to fix those things.
I can't see my own errors. That's the problem.
Well, thank you, Judy, very, very much for helping us understand about
Forward to everybody again.
Sikhism and so forth. Just very, very informative and inspiring. So, and thank you all for coming. Thank you, Kirk, for helping out with the tech part and helping to monitor things. And I would just mention for next week. Oh, there's something that I wanted to mention that I kind of forgot. The Universal Theosophy website is doing a presentation on the 20th, which is a week from today, and it'll be at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time of November. And it's called International Great Teachers Day. And then this year, the theme will be on human solidarity. Just wanted to mention that. And also on the same day, later in the same day, the Aquarian series will be doing it at the normal time of 4:30 and 7:30, on Shambhala. And that'll be very Buddhist oriented, but very theosophical. And I think it must be connected with the idea of the Mahatmas. So, and November 17th, etc. So again, thank you all very much. Thank you, Judy, very, very much.
Well, thank you all.
And
Thank you.
Judy,
for your-
Thank you all.
before you get off,
Namaste.
Yes,
everybody.
Judy?
thank you, thank you.
Wait,
Yes.
hello?
Thank you.
I don't think we-
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Shimali. I'll see you soon.
Okay.